Okay, I am going to diminish everybody here on my screen. All right, so here we go. Our agenda tonight, we're going to talk about new members and guests, recent meetups, upcoming meetups, and I'm going to go through this pretty fast because, you know, we've got a lot of ground to cover and everybody wants to see the assignment Tulsa.
It gets dark.
And everybody wants to see Jack Curran's critique. So new members, we're welcoming tonight Gary Gerhardt, Debbie Roberts, and Lunar Christian. Any of those people on tonight? I didn't see any.
I'm scrolling through to see if I can spot anyone.
They just shoot color.
All right, so recent meetups, just a quick rundown. Had a little thing out of Skytook Lake that Barry hosted to photograph the Milky Way. There's some of our members out there getting ready. And there's Robert's picture that he took. Got him a nice little star trail there, shooting star.
No, I couldn't.
Then we had
Are we muted?
we had a no, you're not muted. We had the fly-in this month, and then we had a coffee on August 22nd. The subject was aviation, and here's one of Loretta's pictures that she took. Any aviation subject was good. There's one of mine that I took a couple of years ago and did a little bit of Harkenization on that. That's an inside joke, but there's Richard's photo of the fresh market down on Admiral. Had a little meet up there, take some pictures. I really love that picture. Looking at
Even if it is color.
Yeah. Looking at the future here, we're going to have coffee at the virtual lodge at 9 a.m.
Not this Saturday.
Not this
A
coming
week from this Saturday.
Because Bill and Mary Oswald are celebrating their 50th anniversary this Saturday, I think. So they're going to be doing something else. Whatever's appropriate. August 31st, deadline for theme of the month. August 31st, deadline for assignment Tulsa, icons. I've sent my picture in, and we'll get a report from Mark Goff of how many we've got so far. September 1st, we start the month for assignment Tulsa with the parks. That'll be the theme. September 12th, we've got the Botanic Garden photo walk. And then Kathy, if you can unmute if you'll unmute Kathy, she can talk to us a little bit about Mike Moat's and the Botanic Garden.
See.
Botanic.
I'm looking.
The Botanic Garden, as a matter of fact, I just put it up today because I finally resolved Lori resolved everything ticket-wise. It will be an event restricted to 20 people. They will open an hour early for us to come in, so we'll have an hour without the public there. There's a pretty good list of instructions on what you need to do because your ticket does have to be purchased ahead of time as well as printed out. So we all need to arrive if you're going at 9 o'clock. There'll be somebody there that's going to take our tickets since they won't be able to scan them. Their system will show a 10 o'clock to noon time frame for us, but we actually have 9 to 11. So anyway, that's coming up on September 12th. And then on the 16th, Mike Moats, who is a professional international macro photographer, is going to do a webinar for us. You might remember, oh, I don't know how long ago it was now, he offered a lifetime membership to someone in our club, and we did a little drawing. Ruthie Sullivan won that. So I would really love for you all to take a look at the event and sign up for it. He did a similar event for a club in Maryland and had 400 people attend the virtual webinar. We only have 10 people signed up. So I hope that others will take a look at it and join in.
Yeah.
Hunt's Camera also has a link that's on the page to sign up for the seminar that gives us some sales offers, as well as a link to their video library, which they have some really good videos out there to learn this, that, and whatever. So worth checking out. But anyway, those are the two events that we have for September.
Hey,
Well,
can I jump in for a second, Bill?
Sure.
Is that a Tulsa accent?
yes.
Oh, that's Maine accent.
East Tulsa.
Yeah,
Massachusetts.
absolutely. And then the second thing I wanted to say real quick is, if you guys are going to a botanic garden, if you have a chance to go visit maybe Sarah Marino or Ann Belmont, they are absolutely wonderful in that space. Anyway, that's it.
Now, who is that, Jack?
Sarah Marino is a photographer out of Colorado, and Ann Belmont really specializes in botanicals, and she's out of Chicago.
Great. So
And,
check out their websites.
Yeah, just look them up. They're just wonderful. And Sarah really specializes in that close-up kind of abstract, but symmetrical and geographic, and Ann does, a lot of lens baby flowers and stuff like that.
Okay.
what was Sarah's last name again?
Marino, Marino.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good.
And
Belmont.
okay.
So go
And-
sign up for those two events. And
Thank you, Jack.
the other aspect of that, if you go to the Botanic Garden photo walk, you could also knock out your picture for Assignment Tulsa, since it's parks.
It is Pox.
Mhm.
Kathy, what was the name of the organization you said had all the videos out there?
If you go, it's Hunt's Camera, but what you need to do is go to the event calendar and sign up for, or at least read the information for the virtual seminar for Mike Moak.
Okay,
And the website is in that information, as well as a link to their sale page.
okay.
Okay,
We're in Maine.
Portland.
Oh, my family is up there in Boothbay Harbor.
No,
Yeah.
they have a very nice store in Portland. I've been to it a couple of times.
My cousin's on Drake Island.
Love Maine.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right, moving along here. Other upcoming meetups. I guess PhotoCon is still on, as far as I know.
No, I think they've moved it again.
Again.
Yeah.
All right. As you were.
I think it's pushed back to April.
Really?
I
Okay.
believe that's right. It's
Well, I stand corrected there. I thought I'd throw it in there because I wasn't sure.
October 15th to the 17th.
It's still on?
Well, I guess we just need to check
No,
Bedford's on that.
I don't believe it's still happening. I think it's been
I think
canceled.
they put it off to April of 2021.
Yeah.
All right. All right. I'll delete that slide. Okay, upcoming virtual library sessions. We've got September 23rd, Stories, the fairest of the not fair. The fair's been canceled, but the stories will continue. And just like we did last year, we'll have some folks send me their images, and then they will talk about them, tell the backstory behind them, what prompted them to photograph that particular thing. And I've got commitments from Larry Hall, Dave Muller, Richard and Kathy, and Richard Harkins so far to send me images. The rest of you can can follow along if you would.
Does this can you tell us a little bit more about this? Does it have to be about the fair or anything?
No, it's just whatever you were going to enter in the fair.
Ah,
And it's
Okay.
wide open. There's no categories. So whatever category you were thinking about, you know,
Oh, okay.
why you just send me your image and we'll talk about it.
so we need to look at those fair categories again somehow.
No, you don't really, you know.
Just a picture we're proud of.
Yeah.
Yeah, just pick your 2 favorite pictures for the year or 3.
Yeah.
Oh, 2. I did the fair categories. I'm going to send you 37, Bill.
Well, I think 3 would be a good limit. You know, I mean, I guess we could go all night if we got that many images. All right, October 28th, RAW versus JPEG, the whole story. Gary Friedman, who's a photographer that I've been following for years, basically because he and I are both old Minolta camera people, and that's what I used to shoot in film days. And then he went to Sony, and so did I. So any of you all that use Sony, he's done several books on them, and he's done several books on lots of other camera brands. But we kind of had a vote of 2 or 3 different subjects, and RAW versus JPEG was one that everybody picked. So it ought to be really an interesting technical and an interesting presentation overall to get the whole story. I've got November and December plugged in up here. I just wanted to remind you that the dates will not be the 4th Wednesday of the month, but rather the 3rd. So it'll be November 18th and December 16th because of Thanksgiving and Christmas. So we'll be advancing things a little bit. All right. Da, 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 da. I'd like to welcome Mark Dolph tonight. Big thanks to him. He's the curator of history at Gilcrease and professor of history at TCC. And as you know, Mark has been on before when we introduced the Assignment Tulsa contest. And he's going to run us through the top 9 entries for July. The theme was buildings. So Mark, take it away.
Thank you, Bill, and thank all of you that entered. We had 40 entries for July, and as I expected, you folks made me look really good in the idea that we came up with that became Assignment Tulsa. It was really hard to find, to winnow down to the 9 top images. I know I had several out of the 40 that I would have liked to have included, but the original plan was to have 9 each month for the first 4 months, and then I think 13 in the final month. So some really great images that will be hanging on the wall in Gilcrease Museum beginning next March. And then there's many more that I would love to include if we just had more wall space. As Bill mentioned, the August contest is ongoing through Monday at 11 o'clock, August 31st, 11 p.m. To date, I have 11 entries. And if August is anything like July, I'll probably get more than half of the entries in the last 2 or 3 days. So I encourage you to, if you haven't taken your iconic photo of an icon, please do so. Look forward to seeing them. And I guess, Bill, with that, the overall winner for July was this image by John Duberstein. And the top 5 or so photos were very close in the judging. In fact, there was a tie at the top. This work and another one that you'll see, I won't mention which one it is, you can guess. They tied on points. And so the tiebreaker came down to the fact that this work, The World Below, was on all three judges' top 10 list, where the other one scored very high but was on 2 of the 3 judges. And my decision was, because there was a consensus among the 3 that this should be the overall winner, became our overall winner. I think, I'll just speak for myself and not the other judges, I really liked the creativity of the shop. The theme was buildings, and as someone in a museum that wants to curate an exhibition that features buildings, in this case, broadly defined, here we have something underneath the streets, underneath the city that most people don't see. And I think all of the judges appreciated the creativity, and I would say personally, I thought the photographer, John Doberstein, really kind of rolled the dice and put out a very different kind of image. So thank you, John, for this image. I will say that the judges did not know who took the photograph, and they did not have the text that accompanied it. That was something that Bill, Kathy, and I had established, I guess, as a judging ground rule at the beginning of the process, that the judges would, other than myself, and because they all come to me, I see them, I know who they are, at least when I receive them. The other judges did not know who took the photograph. All they had was the image and the title of the work. They did not see the text that accompanied them as they came in, and didn't see it until after all the judging was done. So with that, this is the overall winner for the month. And I asked Bill not to rank the balance of them. To me, they're all winners, numbers 2 through 9. So they're not presented in any particular order. So Bill, if you go to the next screen, please.
Okay.
This is by David Kidd. Again, I'm just going to speak generally for myself. I could make comments on all 40. They'd be positive comments, but I know that I really like the angle of vision here, the perspective, the reflections. So, David, thank you very much for this very attractive view of Cityplex Towers, which I think certainly qualifies as a building. I could imagine this could be an icon as well for this month, as long as you take a different photograph of it, David. And then Bill, the next one is this by Kathy.
Yeah.
And just again, personally, I love the framing of the image, the perspective, the reflection certainly mirrors the title of the work, with both the very new as well as the historic buildings of Tulsa, and how she juxtaposed those in this. So we get the modern, and as she says in her description, the neo-Gothic and the Art Deco that is well represented here in Tulsa.
Good job.
And then next, we have an image that I think really defines the original goal of this exhibition, Assignment Tulsa, as an exercise in photojournalism, that Bill caught a very ephemeral view of the Tulsa theater. I know that I must have seen this image that Bill took maybe a day or two before he took it, and then it was gone. The banner was removed shortly thereafter. So I think this really captures an important building, a part of Tulsa's history, but it also captures what has been going on in Tulsa since May 25th, and is continuing to be a part of the summer of 2020, not only in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the nation, but the world at large.
Can I just say that the mask in that image is what makes that work?
The mask? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I won't speak for Bill, but I think he learned a lot from your presentation. Was that in June or July?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love the way the mask is looking up at the sign and has an expressive face.
Well, and there was another image that reflected this same summer of protests for Black Lives Matter. It's a wonderful photograph. You'll know what I'm talking about if you go to the PHOTOG website, because Bill, am I correct that you now have all of the photos, or will have all of the photos that were entered so people can see?
I'm not sure they're all up yet, but
They will be soon.
they will be.
Okay.
We'll
So again, the first point would be, you'll see how really good the photographs that were entered were, and then you'll see another one that when you see it, you'll know what I was referring to with this. So on to the next one. We have this image, and again, speaking for just myself, I love the perspective, the framing, and for someone, you know, from my title, Curator of History, it really speaks to the changing skyscape, landscape of Tulsa, that here we are in the box yard, one of the most contemporary examples of architecture in Tulsa right now, where the site is recycled shipping containers into a retail outlet. And we're sitting on an upper deck looking at historic Tulsa, a beautiful skyline, a beautiful afternoon full of clouds. So that was really appealing to me, and obviously the other judges thought highly of it. So congratulations, Ruthie. A box yard view is a wonderful statement on Tulsa 2020 in its own way.
I'm glad we're not ruthless tonight.
I think everyone's been here so far.
Thank you, Mark.
Way to go, Ruthie.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yes, congrats. And I don't know Ruthie, but nice to meet you, Ruthie. Wonderful photograph.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
And this is another photograph that got a lot of comments. The Art of Perspective by Evan O'Bannon. I think you don't need any description if you've been in downtown Tulsa to know what building or set of buildings this is. They're at 3rd and Boulder. Just a wonderful perspective, very creative. And this kind of perspective was presented in several of the photographs, like David Kidd's, like Kathy's, and others. Just a very striking photograph. And again, I guess as a judge, it's really hard for me to take my museum hat off. My first impression is often probably, how would a visitor react to this? And I think this is a great example of something that a visitor would be drawn to, as all of these works are. Next, we have Towering Reflections. Reflections is a kind of common theme on many of these, by Cindy McKinney. Cindy, did you get to join us tonight? I saw a Cindy, but I wasn't sure.
Thank you. Sorry, I couldn't get it off on mute. Yes, thank you, Mark.
Okay, good to not see you, but hear you, Cindy. Again, a building that could be considered iconic, the BOK Tower, but reflected in a different way, reflected off another building.
I think that's the building in the previous photo, isn't it? That's reflected off of, or not?
No.
The Sampson building? I'm not
I
sure.
think it is the Sampson building, but the other, Evan O'Bannon's, isn't that the,
It's BOK, and I think in that City Hall, I don't know what that is.
Oh, yes. Well,
yeah, I think
thought
that's
City
City
Hall,
Hall.
must
Yeah.
be. Yeah, because it's mostly transparent,
Yes.
or glass, rather. Great shot.
Thanks.
I don't think City Hall is that far away from Williams. They're connected. I used to walk through City Hall every day to get to work at Williams, so I don't
Me
think
too.
that's City Hall.
Well, there's an interesting way for visitors to appreciate these works, is to try to define exactly where they are in Tulsa beyond what the description provides.
That's true.
Okay, Bill, I think we have one more.
Couple more.
No, two more. All of the judges loved this image. Parking garage shadows, taking a more or less just mundane kind of image downtown. We have so many parking lots and parking garages, but to take something like that and turn it into art, I think was special. We just love the geometry, the forms. The only thing I thought, and you didn't have a choice in this, Anitra, was I bet if you got to do some post-production on this, you'd take out some of the lines, maybe not, the power lines between the lights, but it's a wonderful photograph. We just all loved it, and I think it's even better in black and white. And that's something that I noticed, that I would say half of the 40 entries were in black and white.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I think there was 4 winners in black and white and 5 in color.
So no prejudice at all.
No.
Toward.
I just mixed them up as we go through here.
And then again, once we started with the second image, all of these are winners as far as I'm concerned. They're not in any particular order. It just turns out that while we started with an image underneath Tulsa, connecting buildings, here we have one within a building. And certainly, Roberta, T is for Timeless Tulsa. This is an image that I think most people will be familiar with, but the way that you've presented it is wonderful. And we went from black and white to one that's full of color. Great way to end the presentation, Bill.
All right. Way to go, Bert.
I think Bert joined us tonight. Someone's going to have to give her a call.
I guess so. All right, congratulations to all of the entries and to the winners, of course. Winners, please take or send your full resolution image to Apertures in the next 10 days. If you have any questions, talk to Mary Beth down there. We had her presentation not long ago about preparing your photos for printing. So you can take some of that, use it, and then get your image to printing. Now, Apertures is going to arrange to get the pictures down to the framers at Ziegler, so you won't have to worry about that. You will be getting an email explaining how to pay on the PHOTOG website. You don't have to pay Apertures. You're going to be getting an email. It's going to be just like when you join or when you attend a meetup where there's a fee, like when we go to the Heritage Horses or something like that. If you all have any questions, why, send me a note or Kathy a note or whatever. We'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Mark, thank you very much. It was a great job of curating these, and we will sure be looking forward to next month when we get the winners of the icons and get to go through them.
Thank you. And again, I encourage everyone, whether you're tuning in tonight or you know someone that hasn't sent in their entry, to get those in. I would hope that we get at least 40 like we did for July. And I would say on behalf of Appetors, they're going to want to process this first month, July, and have them processed and printed, I would say, by the end of September, if that's possible, so that we then get those over to Ziegler's. They're doing the framing as the next month, August, judging is completed, and we start the cycle all over again. So we keep things in the pipeline, both for the judging, for Appetors, and then for Ziegler's.
Good point, because yeah, we need to keep things moving. So you'll probably be getting a reminder. Next, theme of the month, black and white. And Jane, are you up?
I am here.
You're on?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Great. Okay.
All right.
So our runner-up, novice runner-up, goes to Ruthie Sullivan.
Ruthie, good job.
Congratulations,
Nice
Ruthie.
bridge.
Thank you.
Where is that bridge?
That is in North Fork, Arkansas. It's on the White River.
Okay.
Yeah. If you notice, there's that's an old bridge, and then underneath it is a newer construction bridge. Well, one is the railroad bridge, and the other one is for cars.
Okay.
All right.
Right.
Well, someday you'll get your little piece of paper.
I am so far behind on printing those. Oh my God.
All right, next up.
All right. Novice first place goes to Anitra Lavinar. Is she on tonight?
I think so.
I'm
He's
here.
out there.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Was this taken in Colorado? Because I see trees of Colorado.
Yes, it was, and it actually was taken with my iPhone, even though I do most now with my other camera.
Okay.
That's okay. That's allowed.
Yep. It's beautiful. Okay. The advanced runner-up goes to Sarah Heyman, and I know Sarah's on here.
Well, thank you.
That's one of our downtown churches, right?
It is, yes.
Yes. Very nice.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Advanced
And
first.
da-da-da-da. There we go.
Michael Erdak from Centennial Park. I saw Michael on here earlier.
Yeah,
here. I'm with Lisa's feed.
yeah.
Okay, well, I saw both of you. I saw you. Congratulations, Michael.
Nice
Thank you very
work,
much.
Michael. You bet.
Boy, wait till I get to that one.
Yeah.
All right.
I see a lot of those little Lightroom dots on there.
I'm just kidding.
Jack, you have my blessings to shred it if you need to.
I don't shred anything.
Make it better for me, please.
All right.
All right. So this month's theme is green. Woo! Okay, I don't know what happened to this slide, but it cut my words off.
I don't know what happened either. It's not my fault. Yeah, it is my fault. I'm sure I just didn't get it.
I'm thinking something might happen in transition. I don't always just jump to the conclusion that it's your fault. But anyway, our theme this month is green, and the subject needs to have some green in it. Okay, so I don't know. I was thinking back to that picture that Richard had at the market, that I saw a lot of green in that. You know, I'm thinking the basket was green, but it would have been cool if they had something green in the basket. But anyway, the subject needs to have some green in it. So if you were to, my alien bees are green. So if I was standing here by an alien bee light, the light, it's a subject, it's got green in it. Okay. Good.
All right. Okay.
What I get for sitting here in my studio. I'm trying to find something green.
All right. Well, I need to get busy and get something green going here.
And so these are due by the 31st, 11 p.m. And I believe the 31st is on Monday.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you, Jean.
You're welcome.
All right. And now we'll go to the main the part of the show as far as the education part goes. Going to have Jack Curran all the way from St. Louis, home of the cards.
Great cards.
We will. I will unshare my screen, and Jack can take it away.
Wonderful. Let me get in here and get the first one up. So I'm going to start with the novice, but let me just kind of set some expectations, right? So first of all, you know, I don't have any raw files here, so I can't really get into these things and see what the range and tones and stuff like that are. But, you know, overall, I'm going to just say that the novice and the advanced, you guys did a really good job, right? So let's just start there. I thought that there were some really interesting images in here, some great perspectives. I think you guys did a really good job of taking these things and thinking about your compositions. So as we go through these things, I'm going to talk a little bit more about vision and exploring your images and thinking about where they could go, as opposed to just kind of the standard, your composition is good and your angle is good and stuff like this. What I'd like to do is help you take them to somewhere a little bit different where possible. Some of these I looked at, there was not much that I could really think about doing, and that's a good thing, right? Because that means that, you know, they're in a pretty good place, or I didn't have enough of a file to really kind of play with it and move it. What I did do is I went into some of them and I took the file and did a little bit of Lightroom on some of them just to show, because sometimes it's hard to kind of verbally talk through what I'm trying to get across. So I tried to visually show you in some examples. You know, we'll talk a little bit about composition, but I'd rather talk more about emotion, your emotional connection to these things, the light, luminosity, if there's atmosphere in them, mood, tension, some of the things that, you know, make a difference in a photograph, as opposed to just taking the photograph, converting it to black and white and looking at it and saying, okay, I think I have a good representation of black and white. I'd like to help you push it along a little bit so that your vision can grow. Again, as I said, they're all good photographs, and I think it's a matter of, you know, taking them just a little bit farther, or just tweaking some little things to help make them a little bit better. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with the novices here. I'm gonna see if I can. I'd like to get this bar over. Sorry, this bar over to the side here, so it's out of my way.
You can just minimize it, I think.
Yeah, so I just did that. Okay, so we have the bridge here, right? The one from Arkansas. And, you know, when I first look at this, so what I would like to do is, whoever took this shot, if you could, you know, jump on and unmute just for a second.
Yep. I'm here.
So tell me a little bit about, you know, what you were thinking when you were shooting this.
Well, I have a thing for bridges.
Okay.
My parents met on a bridge, on a railroad track bridge, actually. So I was actually down on a, what do you call that? You put your boat in. Boat ramp, looking up at this. And I just kind of liked how there was two bridges there.
Were you looking at geometric shapes? Were you looking at, you know, how you have it kind of a little foreshortened in the foreground to the distance and how it travels across the scene?
Yeah, I was just thinking of the lines.
Okay. All right. So, and I'm imagining that you had a nice kind of sunny blue day.
Yes.
So the one thing that's a little challenging when you shoot in the sun like this is managing the contrast and dynamic range. So it gets hard to, you know, expand your range of light because it's already so short with the contrast.
And
you know,
well, I don't think that this picture really looks like how it is in Lightroom. When I export it, it seems to be darker.
Well, that's okay.
So like, there was more highlights like in the leaves, like on the left-hand side down at the bottom.
Right.
Those were more, it wasn't so dark.
Well, that's okay. I mean, it works. How long were you in Arkansas?
At this particular point here, only maybe about 10 minutes.
Okay.
So I mean, I was there. We were getting on a fishing boat to go fishing, and
right.
I always have my camera with me, and I liked it. I had seen it the day before.
Okay. The reason I ask is because if you have a subject like this, and you have an opportunity to be there for 2 or 3 days, you can keep coming back to the subject and checking to see if there's environmental things that change, like fog or late evening or early morning.
Yes.
It
Actually, those
would change the
opportunities were
light.
there.
It would change the light and allow you an opportunity to explore different kinds of light. So what I do like is I think you've done a good job of organizing the subject in the frame. I think, like I said before, if you wanted to go back out there and look at it in some different environmental conditions or, you know, atmospheric conditions, it might be a little bit more interesting. But you've done a good job of the composition. I like the way you've organized the lines and tell the story of the old bridge and the new bridge. You know, I like I said, I don't have the raw file. I don't think it would help to go into the blue sky and try to make it a lot darker. The mid-tone range, if you leave it where it is right now, the bridge kind of pops out of it. If you make it too dark, it might get lost up there and not as well defined. I am seeing some.
What are you looking for? I muted.
I am seeing some, you know, little white kind of glows around some of the vertical structures in there. So I don't know if that's from trying to pull the sky down in the back. And, you know, the thing you might want to look at there, see there's a little glow around this tree down here and stuff. So that, if you were to do these moves that you're doing here with a range mask and move the sliders left or right, you can manage that and you probably won't get those.
Okay.
So just a thought. Okay. But overall, again, like I said, everybody's done a pretty good job here. And, you know, if I can define this a little bit more, let me just see something. I've got my tabs turned off here and I'm going to escape for a second and see if I can get this out of the way. Can't seem to grab the top of my bar. I'm going to exit full screen for a second here. I'm going to make it a little bigger. And then if I wanted to go in here and do anything with it, I would encourage you to go in and I'm going to hit Command apostrophe and make a virtual copy. At least I think I am once I get back in Lightroom. And so what I would encourage you to do is, you know, there isn't a lot of atmosphere in here and stuff like that. So, you know, I've just put a big radial filter on here, and I'm just kind of trying to think about what I would do. Double click effect, and you can see I either brighten that or lighten it. And then you could come down here and look at the water and get a little more contrast out of the water and leave that gradation in the sky. It starts to add a little depth to the image, right?
Yeah.
So, and a little contrast down in there and just little details. So the other option is to, I'm going to go in real quick, and I'm just going to try something else real quick. So I'm going to go and I'm going to do a new one here. I'm going to double click effect, and then I'm going to pull this area down, and I'm going to look at invert, and I just want to explore. So I'm not really doing anything, but I'm just kind of exploring now.
Oh, wow.
And then I'm going back to this one, and I'm going to open up the water a little bit more. And then I might go into the shadows over here and think about what I'm doing with the shadows. And you said those leaves had more highlights on them.
Yes.
So, and again, I'm doing this so super quick, and I don't have a raw file or anything like that. So I'm just kind of playing with it. But that's what I would encourage you to do, is just play with it. So now I've got a brush, and I'm going to go back, and because you like the dichotomy of that bridge back here, I'm going to get a range mask right here. Well, I think, I got to start it. So I'm going to start it. I'm going to get a range mask. I'm going to hit the luminance. I'm going to take the black down. So I'm just moving the highlights, and then I can go through here and just make that a little smaller. Just move that over a little bit more. And then I can go back and just bring out that bridge and the pylons here and get that to pop a little bit more. But that's my point, is just to explore the image and make 4 or 5 virtual copies, and then get to where you feel like, oh, this is really where I'm starting to feel it and I'm emotionally connected to it. Does that make any sense?
It does. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's really, again, it's going to be what you want it to be,
Right.
and how you feel about it, not what I see or what I feel about it.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome. I'm going to move on to the next one. This is a lovely old car. And I really like the way you've got the motion going on in here and the road going off into infinity. I like the balance between the car and the way the road is going off into the distance. Now, I don't know whose this is. Is this person here? Is this person here? Can you see it?
It's Robert Littles, and he's trying to get on, but he's having some computer problems, so he's not.
Well, can he hear?
Not that I know of.
Well, I can come back to it later if he's going to come on.
Oh yeah, maybe do that.
All right, I'll come back to it. Somebody let me know when he comes on. So what was this, the first place winner?
Yeah. Novice.
Novice first place.
Yeah.
So this is a really, really nice image. I love the way you've used the lines in this image, both the leading line off into the distance, and you've used the vertical lines of the aspens. The one thing that I would say here, I think you had a good perspective and a good vision for where you wanted this to go. So now it's like, let's think about the imagination, because the one thing I see here is there's a lot of tones in exactly the same kind of range, a lot of highlights with the exception of a few midtones in here. Wonderful footprints down here in the path, great vertical lines in the trees. The thing about aspens is they have the ability to glow in black and white and really present luminosity. So, you know, I can see that you're kind of connected to this and you love the vision of the path leading off into the distance. And that's wonderful. It has a nice feeling to it. What I'm wondering though is if we can take this composition, not change a thing about the composition, but look at the light in this image and see if we can take this light and change it a little and go somewhere like this a little bit, where now the path is leading to this light in the background. And again, this may not be perfect, but you can see now how the path is drawn in here. There's some nice, texture and darkness on the sides. And let me just show you real quickly the difference. So if you look at it like this, and then we can take a brush, and I can go back in here with this brush and go back to my range mask here. Oh, I got to move it, so just bear with me for a second. Do luminance, move the left slider over towards the right, and that allows me to just, if I click this real quick, I can show you, won't show me that. I'll show you this real quick. But I can paint in here now, and I can make my brush a little smaller, and I can just go down these trees, and I'm going to turn that off for a second, and then go into the thing here and really kind of work these a little bit. It's a little too much, but I can go in and just start playing with these trees. I'm going to do a new one and just start over right here. And you can see how these trees are starting to pop out, but they have more contrast in them now. And again, I'm just doing this real fast. And then I can pull this, or I can take the range mask down here that I was using. And I can paint in there a little bit more. And then I can manage the contrast in there. So let me just show you back and forth again. And now it's just got a little bit, it's a little bit more open. Yours is a little bit more open. This one is starting to take me down the path, and I'm guided by this. Yeah.
Yeah, he put that in.
Yeah.
I love it. It's great.
So does that make sense? The other thing that I would recommend is when you get one of these images like this, the hard part is the eye, when there's so much structure in there, wants to leave the frame, right? So it wants to go out the top and out the bottom, and the only thing holding me in is this part in the middle. So, and I don't know if I did this, but you can see now that I have a couple of radial filters in here. I'm going to turn that on for a second, or one right here that's longer. And you can see it's just illuminating the path.
Wow.
Now, let me show you what that did. You'll notice the invert button is not clicked here. So if I show you that, and now I'm going to go ahead and move it, this is where your image was. This is where your image is going. So now my eye is really focused in on the path as opposed to here where everything's kind of in that same monotone value.
Right.
That makes sense?
Yeah, I didn't even know about the range mask, and so that's why I think I was so limited on the.
Well, you can do this with just a radial filter, so you don't have to do the range mask, but I'll just show you real quick. And I don't want to take too long on these because it'll go all night, but unless you guys want me to, so I'm happy to do that too.
We love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Robert
So
Little just joined.
Then just doing this is kind of what I'm talking about, right? So pulling it down, you might want to keep your contrast up or your whites up on the outside so that you get the luminosity out of the trees.
Yeah.
And then you could take a brush and brush down in that pathway and then just kind of change the luminosity in there. And then, as I said before, you can do a new brush and go into highlights and the whites, and just you have to move it real quick, and then you can go in and set the luminosity on a brush.
But he's got to go.
So I'm just
got one more.
See how these trees are coming to life?
Yeah, it's wonderful.
And so now you've got. I'm going to go back and reset your image and show you. I did this one in a couple of minutes. This is where it was. And then this one is the one that I had played with before. and this is your original. So, does that make sense?
Yes, thank you so much.
No, you're very welcome. So now I have these hands, and I
Jack?
guess this is your marriage certificate.
Yeah, Jack, Robert Little's back on the
Oh,
presentation.
Hello,
Back
yes,
to the
I'm
call.
here. I'm
Robert,
here.
there?
Yep.
Yeah.
Great, Robert. So you missed all the compliments, so I'm not going to repeat them.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
I'm sorry. You're only going to hear the bad stuff now.
Okay.
No, there really is no bad stuff. As I explained before you probably got on, we're just trying to take things a little bit farther and explore the vision on these, and not really think about what's wrong or what's right. It's what we can do to take things to the next level. And when I critique things, I'll point out some things that I think will help, as opposed to, saying things that are wrong, because it's your vision. You're connected to the image. I just would like to see it get just a smidge better. So what I was saying is I really like the motion in this, and I like the fact that it's not completely in focus. I love the road leading off into the distance. I love the blur in the tree, a little bit of texture in the grass on the left and in the road. Something that I thought about is it's a kind of an overcast day, but you have these really nice highlights that are popping on the car that I think we can get to another place that might even make them a little bit more interesting. So let me share this with you real quick.
Okay.
So if you look at the car on the right, or even this other car, I've kind of kept your car in the same way, but I can't tell when I look at this if there's a light going here or a headlight or something on the road.
That was a headlight. It was the last shot of the day right there.
So there's a headlight on the road. Right. So I went in and added a little more contrast over here, put a little density into the sky, and then started playing with the highlights on the car, right? And then I darkened it a little bit more. And if we look at this and I compare the two, now the road is a little bit more dynamic. I can see the headlights are starting to pop. I have these, see the car on the left. Now you have these highlights on the car. I could also go back and I'll do this because they might be a tad bright, but I could knock the highlights down a little bit, and I could use a range mask to just move the highlights if I want, and then compare the two. And I've got these wonderful beams of light bouncing off the car. I've got the headlight is now a focus and leading me down the road. So I'm going with the driver. I'm starting to travel with him. And then I added just a little dimension and depth in the sky so that I have a direction so I know where the light's coming from. Sometimes if I don't know where the light's coming from, I have trouble trying to figure out where I'm going in the photograph. So it adds an element of mood. It adds a little bit of luminosity now with the headlamp. There's not much atmosphere. It was probably just a blue sky or something that was going to evening. The composition is very nice. So, this is a nice image. I don't know what you think about the things that I did.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah.
But this car has these wonderful highlights on it that I thought I'd just kind of work out a little bit. And I'll just show you real quick. So I used some radial filters in here with the whites popped up. I used a big radial and inverted it and brought the background down. So let me just do this.
Wow.
A highlight in there, right?
That's amazing.
This radial filter is just helping with the headlight and the street. This one is just opening up the sky, but that was after I darkened the sky. So, again, just little touches in here. This one is the whites on the car and stuff, so you can see how it puts that spotlight on there. It could be a little much, but and then let me see if I did anything. I didn't really do anything with a brush in here. That was just radial filters. So.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. Okay, so now I'm getting married. All right, so this is a fun image. I'm sure it has a lot of emotional connection for somebody. Is the person on the phone?
I'm here.
Okay, and who is this?
Julie Avers.
Hey, Julie. Nice to meet you.
You too.
So, when I first look at this, I absolutely understand what you're trying to communicate here, and I think that's great. There's an emotional connection here. Is it you or is it somebody you know?
It's my best friend's stepdaughter.
That's great. So what I'm trying to do here when I'm thinking about this, the hands are absolutely the focus in this. So I'm sitting here and I'm wondering, well, how, so my eye wants to travel up this frame where the hands are coming in the frame as opposed to staying focused down here. I love the fact that this is out of focus because it detracts a little bit from down here if it's in focus where the hands and the rings are. So let me just show you a little bit of what I did to try and bring the eye into the hands just a little bit more, right? So now I'm focused on here. I actually did what you did here and I left a blur in there, darken the hands and the arms just a little bit up here because I want the focus to stay right in here.
Okay.
If I look at my frame here real quick, it was very simple, an easy thing to do, just explored a couple different things here. One, I brought this highlight in here. You can see that. This one, I need to kind of show you this one first. So this one's working just contrast in here and taking a little texture back out. And then this one actually, if you look right here, this one is taking texture out, clarity out, and dehaze. So I softened that even more in there and then took the highlights up a little bit to take a little bit of the texture out of the documents so that we could focus on the hands. Now, the only thing I would say is, you know, I wish that, I'm gonna double click effect to reset that. I wish that the hands were a little sharper, you know, so I could go into sharpness and maybe add some texture and sharpness in there. And you can see I've got a little bit more, especially back here. The focus is actually back here on this little first part of the hand back here. If the focus were, see how that's adding a little bit of clarity and focus in there? But other than that, I mean, I think you did a good job of communicating what you're trying to do. You know, it's a very personal photograph. So, you know, the composition is good. The crop is good. I completely understand where this is going. And I think, you know, you used a little imagination to come up with this. So that's great. Let me just share this with you one more time. And it's very subtle. It's just a little different. And it's only so that my eye stays where you want it to stay focused. That good? That makes sense?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so I didn't know if this was a dragon or what this was. So is this person on the phone or on the Zoom call?
I'm here.
Okay, great. Now who's this?
Cindy Foreman.
Hi, Cindy. So the one thing when I looked at this image, tell me what you were thinking when you took this image, because I'm kind of curious if I'm aligned with where you are.
I just saw the eye,
Yeah.
which is the knot in the wood.
Right.
And because it was horizontal after the storm instead of vertical,
Right.
I just thought that looked like an animal.
It looks just like a dragon of some kind with the mane up here and everything else, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a couple things, and again, I love that you saw that, right? I love that you found that and saw it. It shows imagination. I think you did a pretty good job with the composition here. It's not dead center. It's up a little from center, which is kind of nice. And it's a fun image. So the hard part of this right now is really the lighting. You know, it's challenging situation because it looks like you're shooting this thing at about noon or 1 o'clock or something. You've got shadows.
Midday.
Pardon me?
It was midday.
Yeah, you've got direct shadows coming, you know, from the top. I mean, I can see them on the tree in the background, right directly under the tree, which tells me it's midday. So the hard part is trying to improve your dynamic range here in the shadows. And I don't know that I've effectively done it, but I want to show you two things that I did. One is I tried to go in here and do this, and I really struggled with it because I don't have the raw file. So it's hard for me to get in here and, you know, dodge and burn this thing effectively. And you can see I'm trying to do that. The other thing that I wanted to consider was, you know, should it be a crop, you know, like this, or even this way, so that it's all about this face. Again, I had a hard time getting there. I love where you're going. I think I would, if this tree's still there, I think I would go back and shoot this tree on an overcast or foggy day.
Well, no such luck there. The city crew came and cut it off at the stump. So.
Oh, that's too bad. They don't know when they have art right in front of them.
Right.
But anyway, so I would go back to the raw file and play with it. Again, I'm not sure that I've done a great job of this because I did it kind of quick.
Yeah, the texture really stands out in yours.
It stands out a little bit, but there's a lot of stuff going on in this frame. So the other thing that you might be able to do is just take this like a kind of radial. Let me double click effect here. And then invert the radial and try this. I don't know if it's going to work, but you might be able to soften and take everything else out, or just because there's so many lines, there's so much stuff going on in here. It's very, very busy. And that's why I said if you would have gone back on an overcast day or very late in the evening, you probably could have had softer light and then gotten really tight on this. And I think you would have really had some fun with it. Again, it's a very fun photograph and very nice. I'm just, you know, it's a little flat in here. And if you could go in, you know, it might be that you just go in with a brush and pump the contrast and the exposure a little white and highlight and just paint in there a little. See that, to try and bring that out. And then I might take a range mask, hit luminance, look at that, and just work the highlights a little bit more so I can get that to pop in there. Can you see that moving? You see that moving? Or this will help you see it.
Mm-hmm.
And finding the right balance in there. And then even going in here, and this eye is awesome. And looking at this eye and popping that eye. Anyway, I'm just having fun now, but you kind of get the idea. It just needs a little bit more tone and popping.
Right.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Okay. So this is a great shot of the moon. Whose is this?
It's mine, Kenneth Krause.
What's your name?
Kenneth Krause.
Okay. What are you shooting this with?
A Nikon P1000.
What lens?
That's the only lens that comes with it.
I'm sorry. What was the lens again?
That's the only lens it comes with.
Oh, okay.
The P1000 has one super zoom lens on it that goes from either 28 millimeter all the way out to like 3,000. Mm-hmm.
Well, is this at 3,000? Because that's a long way.
I think it was at 24 to 28.
I can hardly hear you.
I believe it was at 24 to 28 at the time.
Okay. Well, it's a wonderful picture of the moon, and you've got such wonderful texture in there. So, you know, there's not much I can say about this as far as composition or the accomplishment of what you're trying to do. I think you did a great job of doing this. I'm just going to show you real quickly one alternative idea, and that's really just the light and texture. So let me just share this with you real quick. So you can see on the left here, the edges down here around this curve on the left are a little blown out. And so we're losing a little texture down there. So what I did here is I went back and I kind of reversed the light a little bit. And I put, you'll see here that I put a little radial filter on here and pulled everything down. So let me just share that with you like this, and pulled everything down. And then I went back in with another one and just, you'll see here my sliders, the exposure is up a little bit because I pulled everything down, so I had to go back and lighten it. But then I went in and added a lot of texture in it, a lot of clarity, which helps separates the midtones and push that so that, like if I take this down here, you'll see how it gets softer. And if I push that texture up, I'll be a little careful because I'm starting to get the background, the noise in the sky, but really pulling the texture back up. And I don't think I used anything else but those two things to manage the light a little differently and to bring the texture back in. Let me just shut this off real quick. I didn't do anything else, just up the exposure a little after I did it. And I'll just share that with you again. And now I've got all this texture, like you can see this highlight in the middle, but then all this texture up here along the edges and down around the bottom. You know, you could go back and put another light in there. I do kind of like the way you have the brightness down in here and stuff, but just and the light, when it has a highlight like this on it, it starts to get volume. So it starts to get more curvature in the orb itself. Whereas here, the flatter it gets, the more two-dimensional it is. And the more lighting you have here, the more three-dimensional or round it gets. So does that make any sense? Does that help in any way?
Yes.
Cool. All right, I'm gonna go to one more here. So now we have the Tulsa, what could be a Rolex, but I love this. It's a wonderful clock. And I like the way you have this composed kind of in the middle of the buildings, but not quite in the middle of the buildings. You didn't exactly center it down the sky. So I'm actually like the tension of it being in between the buildings and still seeing that building or whatever this is right here in the center.
That's
and I guess
that's the one of the churches.
Okay.
And that's the reason why I shot it that way.
All right. Yeah, I kind of
because I wanted the line in the middle of the street to point right at the spire of the church.
Right. Well, it works. The only thing is this little Tulsa, whatever this little grid or grate or
Yeah.
thing is here, you know, I'd love to take that out, but I don't do that. So it is what it is. But
Yeah.
let me show you one other alternative that might give you something to just think about or explore. All right. So what I've done here is I've kind of reversed the light just a little bit, and I brightened up the clock face right in here. I'm going to go into the develop module and show you that there's a little bit of light in here. I took and added light down in here, and you can see I opened up the shadows there and a little bit of light here. And what this does, and I'm going to share this with you real quick, it tends to add a little bit more direction, and I also put one up here in the sky so the sky just isn't totally flat. And then I put another one down here on the foreground to bring in a little bit of brightness there and accentuate a little bit of texture and stuff in the sidewalk. So I advanced the clarity and texture in the sidewalk. And I'm just going to share that with you right here. So now you see a little bit of light here, a little bit of light here. And this gives you depth when it goes from a mid-tone to bright, to mid-tone to bright, to dark in your shadow. And the same thing up here, it goes from dark to light and dark to light. Now you have dimension and depth. I'm not sure that the sky works very well, but you know, the clock pops and it tells the whole story because it feels like it's about the clock. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, what I was trying to capture was the buildings leading down the road.
Right.
And I wanted the line in the middle of the street to actually point at the at the spire on the church. So
right. Well, we could
and then,
always go.
And then the fact that I included the clock, I included the clock simply because it was so significant, but also because it had the word Tulsa on it. So
right,
the viewer would know exactly where the picture was taken, and in this case, what time it was taken.
Right. So you could go in, and if you wanted to, you could take an adjustment brush, just touch that, and then go in with a luminosity mask, move it over so you're just playing with the white, and really kind of, you know, pop that little bit there, a little bit more. So that we're just moving the white there, just to help it come out of that shadow and help tell your story of the line.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
So, and this may be too much, you know, you can always go back, and if the story's somewhere else, you can always take that down again.
Sure.
Keep that tone there. I do think that if you like these leading lines of the buildings, having a little light there will help define that depth. So you can see that this adds, you know, the shadows here help the eye travel down the scene. Okay. All right, so whose is this?
That's Ellen Medlocks.
Ellen, are you on?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Okay, great. Wonderful texture. Really like this this door. I wish they still made doors like this. You know, the texture in the wood, the texture in the tooling going on the handles, it's really quite elegant and exquisite. It's interesting the way that the two textures work together and the vertical lines work together. And I don't know if what kind of building is this going to?
This is the side doors of a Catholic cathedral.
Yeah. I've been to a couple of those. And the ornateness of it is very interesting. So the one thing that I kind of sensed in this is that, you know, the tones, with the exception of the highlights in the wood, the tones kind of all feel a little the same. I like the fact that you toned it. So it's not a straight black and white. So if I went in and hit Command apostrophe and just took it to straight black and white, you know, I think your idea of toning it, you know, works. It helps. So let me share with you just one I worked on for a second here. And it's this one over here on the right. The tone to me on this one was just a little yellow green. So I played with the tone a little bit. But what you're going to see here is that I added a little bit of light in here to give it some direction, which gives it, you know, I'm going to go here to here. Well, let me get rid of this one. Go here and here. Darn it. Hit the wrong button. Sorry. There and there. And put them next to each other. And so now you can see that I put a highlight on here, and the texture in the handle is starting to come out, whereas here it's a little flat, right? And so now I'm seeing some separation in the wood back here, and see the lines right here in the center. So now these lines are starting to pop out, but the light is kind of a little bit left to right and still in the center, not perfectly in the center, but coming from the top, right? So I'm going to show you this real quick. And so there's one here, and that one I used to take all the images from the outside down. So if you watch this, it kind of pops right here, and you'll see the exposure is down. So I could take that one and do this, and try and keep it where I was. And then I took one from way up in the corner here. Because I did this one here, it left the highlights in the center. And then I took this one and it overlaps it, and it's not quite as obvious, and it just kind of flows through there, right? So now I've got the highlight in there, overlapping where I left the highlight in there. The rest was pulled down. And then I went back in here and added one just for texture and clarity. So the clarity is separating the midtones and helping me define the difference between the dark lines and the white line, or the dark lines and the highlights. And then the texture is going in and really adding that texture into the handle. So just little subtle things. The composition and the concept and the idea are all great. It's just taking it just a smidge farther and really thinking about what you can do.
Love it. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Okay, so that's it for the novices. Let me go in here and see if I can find the Excel pros, whatever you guys are. Okay. All right, let's see here. I love this shot. I actually want to be in the boat. Now, who is this? Are they here?
Oh,
Trying to
please
find the
be
mute.
here.
He's here?
Okay, you hear me now?
Yep, got it. I know that mute button's hard. Okay.
Well, I wanted to get this dock with the clouds, so it looked kind of like it maybe was sort of floating in the sky.
Yeah.
But I had to find a day where we had some clouds, and it was an extremely hot day. I think it was about 2 p.m. and the clouds were passing fairly slowly. And I had a bit of a problem. If you see in the lower left corner, the roof above me, the shadow is being cast, over
Right
the
here.
water there.
Right here, right?
And I'm not sure whether I would have gotten a cloud reflection in there or not. But
Right.
I went ahead and took it as is. And I was kind of trying to get a sort of a solemnness or solitude sort of atmosphere. Maybe it would have been
all your
nice.
lines are really interesting too against those soft clouds. So you've got vertical lines of the docks, you've got horizontal lines, you've got a triangle with the boat. I mean, you've got a lot going on. So
I had initially had the entire dock, but the right side just didn't, to me, seem to really add to anything. So I just decided to crop it out.
Well, you've
and
got
just
some
leave most
wonderful
of the gangway and some sort of little step ramp on the upper right. I'm not really sure where it goes.
Let me show you kind of where I took this a little bit. So I wanted to play with it just a little. So I'm going to hit this. And if you look at the one on the right, now I think your cloud story is really popping out, right? So
okay, I was trying to pop it a bit, but I didn't want to overdo it and get too much highlight.
Hold on, I'm going to turn on some lights. My sun has gone down, and apparently I'm in the dark.
I think we're all in the dark.
I know I'm sure learning a lot from this.
See if I can do this real quick. That's better. Okay. All right, so you can see how there's two things that I saw in this image that I really enjoyed, and that was there's these little stipply kind of texture in the water. I thought that was really interesting. And then I saw the dynamic change between the highlights and the shadows and the clouds back here. So I went in and I had some fun with that. I also made your dock, just added a little bit more texture down here in the end of the dock so that it was a little bit more continuous and I didn't have this real kind of white hot spot right here in the center. And
right
then,
where the shadow was. Yeah.
yeah, so and then the other thing that I did is I actually changed the angle of this just ever so slightly from right to left to moving it a little bit more centered, but not quite, because I love the tension of the angle being a little off center. And so I just kind of play with that just a little. And then the other thing is I couldn't do anything down here in the bottom right, to your point. I mean, I just discovered that was just black. So went in here And let me do this, hit develop, and I will just show you a little bit of what I've done. So right here, this was really just to pull the edges down, right? So if I share this with you, it didn't do much. But then up here, you can see that I really worked this area up here. And I'm trying to see if I have a range mask on or not. I don't think so. So I opened up that exposure a lot. I pumped the highlights. So if you see how these highlights get pumped here.
Yeah, I like that. I do like that.
And then I opened up the shadows a little bit so that I could pull out a little bit more detail down in here. And then the clarity is what makes all the difference in the world, right? So if you're here and then you start pushing the clarity, what you're doing is you're taking all those midtones and pushing them away from each other. And it really starts opening up the separation in those midtones and creating the contrast that you want, right? You could go in there and add more texture and stuff like that, or make it a little softer and still have the separation. And then,
okay. Yeah, I'm a little shy with the clarity because I usually keep it under 20%. Otherwise it really starts making things look odd.
Well, yeah, you have to, and that's the thing is you can layer it on there and build it. You don't have to do it all in one brush or one radial filter or anything like that. You can do a little bit and come back and do a little bit more and soften it. It's just so it's not so noticeable, right? And so then I also went back in here and you can see I used a brush and I went back and just painted in some of these areas with a little bit more exposure, a little bit of highlights, and just worked some of the highlights. And let me just turn that on again. You'll notice that I avoided the top of the dock here, but then I went back with this one and did the whole dock and pulled the exposure down, right?
Okay.
So again, this is all recorded, so you should be in a pretty good place.
Yeah.
But again, I actually enjoy this shot. I'm a fisherman, so it's kind of hard not to. All right. I'm going to go on to the next one. I feel for these birds. So whom is this?
It's mine, Mark Robinson.
Mark, thank you. So Mark, tell me about this.
Well, we recently moved into a new home several weeks ago, and I happened to be walking on the side of our house and happened to hear these birds chirping in one of the bushes that we had next to the house. So I ran and grabbed my camera and took a picture of them real quick before they grew up and flew off.
That's great. So, so it's very interesting shot. It's got some interesting kind of highlights, especially around the mouths, right? Mm-hmm. But there's a lot going on. You can see their unformed wings and their arms and stuff like that, all kind of going on in the background down low. I like the shallow depth of field. I actually think that helps quite a bit here, because if it was sharp, with any depth of field, it would be so many different lines and it would be very complicated. There is this one stick kind of coming up through the middle here, but overall, I mean, I can feel
one of the rules.
Pardon me?
I said I wanted to take that out. That's one of the rules. We can't take it.
Well, that's okay. I mean, it was there, right? So I don't think I would have either. But anyway, there's this nice circle going on around here. So let me share with you just for a second what I did here, just to try and bring the eye a little bit more focus onto the birds. So I didn't touch this guy in the middle, but what I did do is really focus in on the mouths here, right? So let me show you this. And now a lot of the distracting things in the background have gone a lot darker. And I could even go in here with a develop module. And if I wanted to, I could take a little radial like this, go in here and just play with that eye a little bit more and open up the shadows and just pop that eye just ever so slightly, right? It might be a little much, but just little details. And so I'll share with you for a second here what I did with some of this to bring it down. So this one is, let me show you the other one first. So this one, you'll see that the invert is unclicked and that the exposure is way down. So I'm going to move this for a second and you'll see what I did here.
Yeah.
If I take it back up, this, let me see, this is probably a little closer to where yours was. But then when you take it down, see how those beaks and those birds really start to pop in there?
Yeah.
And it does a good job of, you know, really focusing the eye there and not paying attention to all the distracting other pieces. The other thing, if this is a real problem, you don't have to take it out, but what you can do is take a brush like this, get it started, and then go down to the range mask, luminance, move this slider all the way to the right, and now you're just going to affect the highlights, and you can paint in the highlights, change your brush size. I mean, I would do this a little bit more delicately, and then turn the mask off, and then go up here, and you can just bring that part down, take the highlights down, take the whites down, and then if you have a problem like this, you can go in the erase brush where those things are bleeding over, show the mask, take a little brush, and just erase where you screwed up and went over the edge, and just kind of fix all these in here. So now it's a little cleaner. And I'm not gonna do the whole thing, but now you can see that's even darker in there. That makes sense?
Yeah. Very good. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Okay, so who is this? Are they here?
I hope you're here, whoever you are.
Okay.
It may be Shawnee's.
I think
Yeah, she's not logged on. Yeah.
No, she's not.
Okay. Well, first of all, I think it's a very interesting design and competition, and it's nice that she used an element and had some imagination to look through here. I didn't really do much to this because all I could do is go back and pull in a little bit more detail in the white back here, but you know, the more you darken the white, the less dramatic it gets. So I just didn't touch it. And since she's not here, I probably won't go into too much detail. Okay, whose is this?
I think that is Reggie.
Is Reggie here?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't see him, no.
Well, I maybe if he watches the recording later, that way I can at least say something. So I didn't do much to this one either, and I think it's just a nice composition and a nice photograph of a house. I think the purpose of this may have been to look at the whiteness of it, and you can almost think about, you know, some of these old shots that Ansel Adams would have done in the day where he used white and structures and stuff like that to kind of really shoot in black and white. I think probably one of the most interesting things in the shot is, let me find it, this right here with this bird and the screened-in porch. So again, it feels a little bit like a real estate shot. So I'm not exactly sure where the creative interest was, but so again, I couldn't do much to make this different. So it is what it is, and I think it works well as a you know, straight black and white photograph. Okay, I'm gonna go on to the next one. This is a lovely lobby. I'm not sure whose this is.
This is mine. My name's Richard.
Okay, Richard. I love what you're doing here. I love this lobby. I love the ornamentation. I actually love the highlights up here in the ceiling almost as much as I like anything else in this photograph. So I'm going to just show you real quickly a slight approach that I took to it that is a little bit different. And that's because there's so much texture up here in this ceiling that I discovered when I played with it. And again, I don't have the raw file, so there's probably even more contrast and texture up here than what I'm seeing. But all I did really was play with that and just try and bring a little bit more of that texture out. Now you can decide, you know, what level of texture you like, what level you don't. It's completely up to you. But I'm also going to show you real quickly some things that I did with the light on the wall. So watch the right wall and the left wall right up in here. Okay, so you'll notice that there's a highlight now in the center, and the walls are a little darker around the outside. But what it does is it now takes my eye from kind of an even exposure everywhere to really going down the from top to bottom and towards the doors with a little bit more depth. So it's really all about the depth. So can you see that changing like that?
That's great. Yeah.
And I'll just show you. So now I went in with this one on the right, and I'll just show you that I put a couple of highlights in here, and I brought the edges down with this one. So let me just take that mask off for a second and show you what I did. So it was out in here somewhere, and I brought it down just a little, but then I went back and added highlights in here to help draw the eye down either side. See those?
Yeah.
And then right in here, took the highlights down a little because it was getting too burnt out. And same with this, I took the highlights down there because it was a little there. And then I can't remember, I don't, if I can find a pin, there's a pin right here. Went in and just opened up the highlights up here. After I take things down, I might go back and open up the shadows a little bit. So I went in here with highlights and just added some highlights back in on both sides at the top, so it just didn't get too dark. And just the highlights, not the shadows. So trying to get a little specular to add some edges up in here.
Yeah.
Is that good?
Cool. Thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. Okay, whose is this? Are they here?
Must not be.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Cody,
yep, I'm here. I just didn't. I had my mic turned off. That's all.
Okay. Well, tell me a little bit about this.
Well, it's downtown, and I was doing the pictures for the buildings, and I came across an alley, and I stumbled onto this, and this is a shortened one. It's actually once I cropped it, it went all the way up to the top and down quite a ways, and it might be a little bit busy, but I liked it. Anyways.
Well, that's great. I mean, I think you're seeing lines and you're seeing structure and you're seeing it, and that's the important thing, right? So it's catching your eye and you're liking it. There's actually some things in here that, like this highlight around the third rail going up to the left or right, and the fourth rail going up here. I'm counting from the bottom. Those highlights in there are very, very interesting. Now, there is a lot going on. So simplifying this to bring up some of the more interesting things was kind of an approach that I took a little peek at. And so let me share with you what I did here. I made it even more graphical and really took these elements down here, these horizontal left to right things, and brighten those up so that now I have these lines left to right. So let me just do this with you real quick.
Oh yeah, I see.
So if you look at it, now it's all about the highlights along the edges of those things. I don't mind that the rest is dark. And so now I'm even more graphic. This is graphic, but what I've done is tried to isolate a few elements in there that will hold my eye in the center as opposed to traveling outside the scene, right? So
Right.
you're gonna see in here that I did one radial to kind of darken the edges, you know, so that's this one. And then I have another one in here where I brighten the highlights and the whites up at the top to get those things to pop a little bit more up in there. And even in the midtones up there. And then I have one down here that slid along this edge here. And then I went and evened all these out. And I have to find my, you can see how I went in, and I believe I had a range mask on here at the time, where I went in and just painted the highlights back in. So if you look up here, you'll see my exposure, my highlights, and my whites are up. Jane, if you need to eat, we can eat, or you can eat. You can eat if you need to. Wait for me. Sorry, guys. And then when I used that radial filter, I went in there and evened it out, popped these a little bit brighter up here. Again,
I've not gotten used to using the radial filter. It's
Yeah.
something I need to practice with.
Oh, that's
I
fine.
see that you use it a lot, and I see where it works really well.
Yeah, and again, so something that has a lot of lines and texture and stuff like that, sometimes, you know, you could go back into this thing, and the hard part with something like this is, I'm going to make a quick virtual copy, but it tends to, the brighter it gets like this, the more mushed together all the midtones get. Now you can go in and try and add contrast and texture and pull the black down, and you can pump the contrast, and you can make it almost, you know, like litho film, where it is just totally black and white and very few midtones, right? So you can just do this and then go down here into your tone curve, pump the highlights even more, take these down, and get it really, really graphical. So let me just share that with you real quick. So here's the three. This is the one where I used all the tools. This is the one I did without any tools and just using the curves or the sliders. Almost the same effect. The thing about the tools is I can get more even edges and make them work the details a lot more. That make sense?
Yes, sir.
Great. Okay, this is a fun one. Whose is this?
Muller.
Who?
Dave Muller.
Dave?
Yes.
Is Dave here?
He's probably out shooting the Milky Way again.
He was here earlier.
Oh.
Maybe he's muted.
Well, he may have had some other.
Well, I'm going to pull this up real quick, and I'm just going to show you kind of where I went a little bit, right? So the only thing about this image, I mean, I think it's fun. It's a great composition as far as, you know, having my eye travel through the frame and stuff like that. The grasses and weeds in the foreground really kind of distracted me from paying attention to the Milky Way in the sky. So I did a couple things. One is I went into the Milky Way sky, and I'm just going to show you this real quick. But I darkened a lot of this, and you can see by my sliders over here, the highlights and the whites are all the way down. And, you know, just by doing this, you can see that you're taking the contrast out of that, but leaving enough in there so that there's some texture still in there. And then I also went in and looked at the overall image. Let me just go back here and darken the sky a little bit so that, and the contrast in the sky. So if you look at the two skies here, you'll see the one on the right has a little bit more darkness up there, little contrast, and a little bit more detail down the center here. And that's about it. That's all I did with this. So if he comes on later, he can hear some of my comments. Okay, whose is this?
Do you have a number on that? Because that would make it easier to find.
It says unknown -5 JPEG.
It's me.
You're unknown?
Oh, Loretta.
Loretta.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about this, Loretta.
Well, I spend a lot of time in my garden, and I take lots of pictures out there when I see things. And I liked this image because it kind of shows like the bright newness in the center, and then the unraveling and fading around the edges really attracted me.
Okay. Well, that's great. So I like the way you're thinking, and you're finding and discovering the difference between the growth in the center and the deterioration around the edges. Excuse me. So again, this is one that I couldn't really figure out or come up with a way to think about this any differently. I'm wondering if the approach is one that, because is it a dark background, or did you darken all this around it?
Oh my goodness, I don't remember.
Yeah. Okay.
Probably it was pretty dark, but then I went in and finessed it a little bit to make it more contrast.
Yeah. Well, I think you've got, the contrast in here. I don't know that there's really much I could do as far as, just lightening or adding contrast in there, brightening this up. There wasn't much I could do. So you can see you've got it in a pretty good place. I'd almost love to see this flower, 4 days later, where it's really falling apart and wrinkling up. And then, actually go to the point where you've got a series of these things where they're all kind of in decay or something like that would work really well together. The one-off is hard to tell the story. So I don't know. I just want to check something real quick.
Well, that makes me sad that I didn't submit my original choice, because that was a picture of two blooms. One was in just beautiful, and the other one was already falling apart pretty well.
I would say I like that story, right?
Yeah.
And I think the fact that you saw that because you looked at the edges here, and then the decay going on all up in there and down in here, there's some nice texture, and the story is here. So it's almost like I might have gotten in a little closer and so something like either crop it down and really focus on this, where you're starting to tell the story here, or, looking around for the story, and you've got all this up here, right? So get in closer with your camera and look for those little details and story. And then, there's other things that you can do with your depth of field and some other things, but, as far as I can tell, I can see what you're trying to do. I just think we need to tell the story in a little bit more compelling way.
Well, is it a mitigating factor that this is my first time? I learned so much on this. I had no idea what Lightroom did.
So this makes you almost perfect then. Anyway, you did great.
Thank you.
All right. So let's go here.
I'm here.
Okay. Who's this?
This is Bill.
Oh, boy. He's going to cut me off now.
Bill Oswald.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, the other Bill.
The other Bill. Bill, tell me about this. Where is this? Is this like an old hotel, or what is it?
It's an apartment building, and this was a shot I grabbed after shooting the prime shot I was after. It's kind of let's turn around, let's look in different directions and see what we have. And I found this at about 90 degrees to my left, and I said, I have to shoot this one too. So
yeah, it's wonderful. What I actually love the way there's some of these smaller buildings around it, and you must have had a fairly dark sky.
It was dawn.
It was dawn. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had illumination coming from behind you.
Right. This was to my west, and so the sun was straight behind me.
Yeah, it works. It's well done. I love the texture, and I love the highlights going on in the building and all the different windows. And it almost looks like it got hit by a hurricane and some of the tiles peeled off, right? So I think it's a wonderful building, wonderful shape. You kept the highlights and the detail in the tower up to the top. I'm gonna show you a couple different approaches that I just peeked at. And I not necessarily would change a thing. The other thing that I like is that it's not dead center, right? It's a little off center, and that works for me. So let me just share these with you.
Ooh, yeah.
So let me do this real quick. Somewhere in here, there it is.
Touch of symmetry.
Just a touch. I don't know if that's the same as yours or not. And then I'm gonna show you that one. And all I did was I did those clouds that way and behind it to try and add a little depth, because now what you have is you have, you know, your buildings in the foreground add this nice kind of texture. Then you have your building here in the center, and I brightened it up just a little. But then I brightened the sky back here to give this kind of mysterious layer back here, and then did the same thing up here. So let me share with you what I did a little bit of. So I used a radial in here, and I did this. But if you'll notice the mask, I went back and erased across the building.
Yeah.
Right? So I erased down the highlights in here. And I don't believe it did anything with the luminance mask. So that was one, and really simple. So that was really all about bringing the sky up on either side. So let me just pop that one more time. And you'll see the exposure is up here. Then I went back and erased out where the highlights got too bright right in there. So brush.
Yeah.
And you'll see I erased that, brought all the highlights up in there. And then I don't know that there's any more because your sky was already dark. I might have darkened this up just a little bit in here. I'm going to show you one more. And this is just somewhere in between the two. And of course I didn't straighten it up, but this is somewhere in between the two. I can't tell what's straight here or not. I'm not going to worry about it right now.
That's better.
The sky is not as dark, right, as say this one. And there's some tonal range and stuff like that, but I still have the lighter clouds back here, and I still have depth. And then I went in with a brush and worked on some of the highlights in here to help give them some separation. And I did that with a range mask, moving the shadows out and just touching the highlights. So if you look at the three, or just look at 1, and then 2, and then 3, you know, you can see the 3 different variations, the 2 variations really on the sky. And then, you know, this is a little bit more in your face here. So
yeah,
just some ideas.
I like the dark one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like number 3, but
yeah.
They're all good.
Yeah. I mean, the first one's good. So there's just a couple ideas there. And you'll notice that this little cloud back here starts to come out quite a bit.
That shows up better.
You know, and again, I didn't even touch the foreground here. So I like the way these buildings kind of wrap around and support it. All right. So thanks, Bill. Who's this one?
Hi, Belinda Krause. Hi, Jack.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Good.
At the moment. It depends on what you say.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about this.
Well, I was photobombed by that bee. He was not supposed to be there. I've been doing some online flower photography classes, trying to get the softer petals and the painterly look, and this just kind of happened.
Yeah, managing your depth of field. You did a great job. So I like the composition. What I like is that this bee is not in the center. It's off center. The whole thing works well in here. You've got it wrapped around nicely. I can see some of the tonality back in here. So what I'm gonna show you is just a slightly different look to kind of open up these edges and give you that, where that softness is back here. Try and make it a little bit more dynamic, right? Like this, right? So it's subtle. It's a little bit different crop, but it's subtle in the way these now peel off, right? And I've got a little bit more contrast in the center. It's not any better. It's just different, right? So, and let me just share with you some of the things that I did with that. Is I took a filter in here, and if you can look at this, that's just opening up the shadows and clarity. So I'm playing with the mid-tone here. See how that moves that mid-tone?
Right.
And then I have another one that's a huge one, and it is just managing the top. Now, I kind of liked it with nothing up there, just blowing out to nothing, but it needed a little tone up there to hold the frame edge, you know? And same thing over here. I'm going to move that. The fact that I open it up, and I find the one where I opened it up first. So this one, you can see I opened up the clarity and the shadows quite a bit. And when I did that, that just opens up that whole center. And then I played with the overall outside edges to kind of create some more of that softness. So I look in here, or I look in here, they're just, you know, taking it all down. So let me go back here and just, I'm going to make a quick copy of that. And I'm going to show you. I'm going to take a bigger radial, and I'm going to invert that, and I'm going to actually push it open like that, right?
Okay.
And then go in here and play with the contrast, but open up the shadows a little so it gets a little softer and more ethereal in there. I'm not really touching the bee at all. And then I just kind of went back and brought some of these things down, but now, you know, it's really soft. And so that's why I went back and put some edges back in there. You know, again, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. You could take this one and just go in here and just take your highlights and open your highlights up like this. And now you've got these wonderful petals kind of popping out here. You could take your exposure down and then maybe not work the white quite that much. And then maybe go down here to your tone curve and look at the lights like this. Put your shadows back down a little bit. And I'm just going to hit Command apostrophe. I'm going to reset one of those. And then we're just going to quickly look at the difference in those. But oops. And so that's just opening that up a little bit more. And again,
wow, that's cool.
Other options, right? So and this is where you get to explore and find out what feels good to you and what you're trying to accomplish. And the thing that I was really looking at is just this grayness in the center and trying to figure that out a little bit, you know, like open it up down in here and the edges. So, and again, you could do that. And let's see, we'll take this one, and we still have the gray back here, which kind of helps separate it a little bit from the background. That work?
Yes, thank you so very much.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Beautiful.
Okay, whose is this?
It's Bill Ramsey. It's mine.
Oh boy. We are in trouble now. Bill, tell me about this.
Heat him up.
Tell me about this image. What is this building and what's in front of it? And
Well, it's the building is the Bank of Oklahoma Tower. I think you saw it portrayed in one of the winning images for assignment Tulsa, and I'm on the north side of it at a place that we call the center of the universe in Tulsa, and there's the statue there, so that we never have a cloudless sky in Tulsa. But
it's a big cloud.
Yeah, and you actually can't see it, but there's airplanes stamped into it as well. But it was just about dark. It's getting close to dark, and cloudy night. So
yeah, I love it. Love it. I love the way you juxtaposition the two structures across one another like this. Let me show you just a little bit another approach. And what I did here is I really tried to get a little bit more drama in those clouds behind it.
Yeah.
And I brightened up the building behind the cloud thingamajigger, that structure, to try and get the two to separate a little bit more and add some depth. I noticed how you used the lights down here on the parking garage or whatever that is. So I tried to mimic that a little bit. Now you could go into this one and find that place in between with just opening up the exposure a little bit, right? And then if this one here, let me see, that's got the highlights in there.
I see how that separates the two better.
It separates the two a little better, but you can play with that however you want. And you'll notice that there's a couple different ones in here, and that pulled the exposure down around it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I used one over here where I really just went and pumped the highlights on the left side and brought the highlights back into the parking garage the way you kind of had them before, and tried to do the same thing here with opening this up just a little. You can see that move.
Yeah.
And then this one was opening that whole exposure, including the sky right there. So again, I'm just kind of futzing around with these and not being completely detailed. And again, on all of these, I don't really have a raw file to work with where I can manipulate some of the original data, but it's just subtle, right? And I like the way this helps that center juxtaposition separate a little bit more. But it's a great shot, and I think it's well composed. It's very interesting. A little bit more white in the sky would help, just a little. And then I actually put your little light that you had up here back in. But well done.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So whose is this?
This is mine, Larry.
Hi, Larry. Nice to meet you.
Jack, you're doing a great job.
Isn't this great? This is wonderful.
I think we need to put you on retainer.
Yeah, right before the contest, right?
Right.
Okay. Let me share with this. What I really like this, and here's something that I like a lot, is this light on the face and the highlights coming down the hands. I mean, I think those are really dynamic and really strong, and you know, I can almost feel the emotion that the artist was trying to bring out in the sculpture because of the way that's lit. I'm gonna go in and show you a little bit of this. Having this up here in the front is not a bad thing. Some of the branches up here can be a little distracting, but this is what gives it the depth, so that it's a layer and then another layer behind it, and then another layer back here. Now it's busy back here and a lot going on. And it kind of competes a little bit with this because there's so much texture in this statue, right? There's a ton of texture here. So, and there's a ton of texture here and a ton of texture here. So you've got 3 different layers of texture. So let me just show you something that I did, trying to minimize some of that and really focus on the Indian, right? So I took all the texture down here a little bit, but left enough detail in there so that I still had the depth. And then I took the texture and the highlights down here down a little bit. And I actually went in and used a brush up here And then let's see if I can find the brush. That's the brush just to knock down those real raw highlights. And then there's another brush here on his face and his headdress. And then let's see here. This one I actually opened up. Once I made it darker, because I used one in here. Oh, here it is. So I used one in here and brought the edges down. So let me show you that, right? So that's before everything came down. So you could open all this back up like this and find the right balance. You know, that balance could be anywhere in there. And then the highlights, you can see how the highlights are something that can really compete with the rest of it. So finding that place where the highlights need to come down. And then this one, taking the highlights and the shadows and the whites down here. This one, I actually went back and added a little bit of the highlight back in here because it was getting too dark. So I just popped a little bit right back in there. She opened up the shadows here. So you can see there's a little bit, brought some texture back in there. There wasn't much down here. So, I mean, it just gave me the edges right along here. And you can see the rest there. So I'm just going to share that with you once more. And now the eye doesn't focus on these nearly as much as just focusing in on our chief. So I don't know. Does that make sense, Bill?
Yes, no, Larry. But
Larry,
yes,
sorry,
and
Larry.
I used a lot of your radio filters. And what I was trying to do in mine was showing the sun coming down onto his hands.
Yeah, and you did a great job.
Right down to his hands.
Yeah, you did well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you. I like the use of your radio filters. I need to do that more.
Yeah, so that's why, you know, I said in the very beginning that, you know, this light on his hands is wonderful. So you did a really good job trying to communicate that. And I can see the emotion in here. And you can see I lighten the face just a little bit so that the light coming on the hands and the face are a little bit similar. There's actually some texture in this face over here that I like. So, you know.
I lightened it. I lightened the original face. It was much darker the way it's sitting back in the bushes.
Yeah, right.
So I did that, but I didn't do as much as you did. So thank you.
So but what you can do is make virtual copies. So now there's 3 copies and you can go back and this is your original and you can just go back and say, okay, maybe I love it the way it is right now, but I'm just going to get rid of these highlights here. And I'm just going to take the highlights down and the whites, just knock that down. Not going to worry about that. Then I'm just going to open up the face and the shadows and a little bit here, maybe move it over here. You could maybe use the gradation. So now I've got this one, and this one. And now I can say, okay, you know, this is my original. I like this still having the texture back here, but now my face is wider, but now this is burned down compared to my original, but I still kept the texture here. So you can make virtual copies and you can go back and then you can look at all 3, 4, 5 of them and say, okay, I worked this area, then I worked this area, then I worked that area, and then I put them together and kind of get to what you might do for a master print, right?
Thank you, Jack.
You bet. Okay, so who's the owner of this one?
Got to be Richard.
You would think. Maybe not.
Is he here?
That's not mine.
No.
Okay, well, just in case the person comes back later. Excuse me, again, I would have liked to have had a raw file on this so I could kind of play with it a little bit more. But the only thing I did here was just get the reflection on the water just a little bit brighter. I didn't have a lot of time to kind of mess around with this and play with it. There was, I tried opening up some of this in the middle. I couldn't find any detail there. It's extremely contrasty, but it, you know, it has a lot of potential. It's a nice shot. I love the concept and where the person was going with the idea of having the water in the foreground and the fireworks in the background and some of the neat buildings. So I probably would explore some other vantage points and just see how that turned out. But you know, I think with the raw file, you can do something a little bit differently. Okay, whose is this?
Mine.
Is that Susan?
That's Susan.
Okay, Susan, tell me a little bit about this.
Well, I was downtown taking pictures for the Gilcrease thing, and that was just a picture I saw. And then when I was looking through and I liked that angle, and I liked the reflections of the clouds. And very frankly, when I was going through it, I was trying to give it a lot of depth and a lot of layers. And when I edited it, that was my goal, was to do as much layering as I could.
Okay.
And then have, you know, the contrast of the smooth building and then the layered clouds.
Okay, great. So did you use a big radial to try and blow out a vignette here?
Yeah.
Okay. Again, this is one I really like to have a raw file and play with this one, but I can see where you're going and trying to maybe kind of create this little ethereal feel to it and blend it with the clouds and the building and then get the eye to focus in here on this hard and soft, you know, the variation between the two. And you have linear lines and then these soft kind of unstructured clouds up here. So I think your concept works, and your composition is nice because it's not, you know, dead center. It's not, you know, there's good tension between the structure and the feel of this, plus the clouds on the right. So let me just do this. I'm gonna see if I can I need to go and develop, make a, no, I'm hitting the wrong thing, virtual copy. And so I'm kind of playing with this. And the thing that I might consider is looking at this a little bit differently. I'm going to invert this and try and soften that vignette a little. It's kind of intense, right? So I'm just softening it and seeing if I can get it to do something. Now I'm going to come back with another one. And now that I've softened it, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to bring back my exposure a little bit in there and contrast and clarity and see if I can get that to kind of pop in there. It's just, I'm trying to hide the vignette that was there a little to make it a little bit softer. And try and tell this story. I'm also going to share one with you real quick, going the other direction, that looks like this, right?
Okay.
So I'm going to show you all three here. I think I'm going to show you all three. And again, this one, your idea with the vignette is not a bad idea at all. It's just, it's so obvious. I would love to see it fade out a little bit like this, or, you know, make sure that whatever subject matter is in here is interesting enough that it holds me in the center all the time. With a vignette like this, I tend to want to go out of the frame and travel to other places. With a vignette like this, and I couldn't really do it because there was already a vignette on it.
Right.
So hard to put another dark vignette over. Very hard. So, but what's nice here is I try to bring back some of these textures in the cloud. And what I like here is this line of windows right here going up now kind of competes and keeps me in the frame here with this dark and textured cloud up here, which you had here. And again, I like it. It's just, I think if you go back to the original and maybe work this vignette a little differently, you might get some interesting ways for the eye to stay centered here and work the two textures together, right?
Okay, well, I'll play with that.
Yeah, just give it a shot. I mean, none of them are right or wrong. I see where you're going with this. There's some very interesting things going on between these two textures and the composition. So I would keep kind of playing with that.
Okay, I will.
All right. Next. Okay, who do we have here?
I'm sorry, it's Sharon, and I had trouble unmuting.
No, no problem at all, Sharon.
Okay.
Tell me a little bit about this.
Well, it's the very first time I ever used a lens baby, and I was trying to experiment with it, and it's like fixed focal length of 2.8 and then manual focus. So, and it blurs the edges. So I was just
right. Well, yeah, and if you think about go look at Ann Belmont's site.
Did that's
Oh, you
why
did?
I tried some of her stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, she's really good at this, right?
Yes,
So,
she is.
And anyway, I've never used a lens baby, but I've certainly shot with shallow depth of field. So I love where you're going with this. Tell me about the background.
It's just, I think it's a chain link fence.
Okay. All right. Cause there's a lot of texture in that background and I like that texture in that background. I actually think it works for this one. The one thing I'm going to show you now is I added a little bit of contrast and a little bit of luminosity kind of in the center because I think the tonal range in the whites and stuff is just a little mushed together. So let me share this with you.
Oh yeah, I like that much better.
Well, and with a lens baby, you're trying to get the eye to go from in focus to out of focus. You're trying to keep it traveling through the frame. So again, this may or may not be perfect because the highlights in here may be still just a little blown out. So you can bring back some of that detail and keep the contrast, right? So,
yes.
But now we've kept some of the contrast in there. It's not quite as blown out. But I also went back, and I'll share this with you real quick, in the develop module with a brush. And I'm going to show you this real quick. So I went back and painted in some highlights just to keep the edges a little brighter, right?
Oh, okay.
And even when you do this, I can turn this mask on. And like I went over there and I can always take an erase and then just get rid of that. You know, I guess I probably have my flow down pretty low here. But go back and clean up some of the edges where you might go over a little bit. You know?
Yeah.
And then so now you've got this brightness that helps add some depth to it.
I like that. Yeah.
So, and I did bring down the edges just a little bit so that the eye would stay focused in the center. But I went back and I think I'm trying to remember. One of these is a I'm going to find it. That pulled the exposure down. But one of these somewhere I went back and just moved the clarity and the midtones and stuff like that to try and get some more texture back in there.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I just playing with that lens.
Yeah, it's a fun lens from what I understand. Good job.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh gosh, here's the first place winner, huh?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. I don't think I did anything to this.
Really?
Yeah. I didn't do much of anything. You know, I think it's a very nice shot. I think it's well done. Was it shot at night or was it shot late evening?
Jack, it was shot. My intention was to get a blue hour shot, and I was there too late, so that was almost an hour after blue hour.
Okay.
Almost
right.
total darkness.
But there was still some light in the sky, right?
Very little. That's a 30-second exposure, Jack.
That's great. So let me just.
I shot that at f11 to keep the buildings crisp and still have a nice foreground.
Right.
I bumped my aperture to, or I closed it down rather to f11 to keep everything sharp and cut down on the exposure time. And that was where I found a happy medium. And even at that, most of the items in the foreground were so dark and muddy that you could barely see them. The three fountains, I used a flashlight and bumped the exposure on them for just a few moments each. And I did the same to the dock or the landing on the left, if you will. The rest of it, just radial filters and brushwork.
Yeah. So I'm just doing a couple little details here. And I don't know if they're working or not. I'm just going to try and get a little luminosity up in the water here. I mean, obviously there's some gunk in the water.
Yeah.
You know, it's probably moss or something else or algae or whatever. But I will, and then the other hard part is there's all this contrast down in here, which I think is fine. Let me just get rid of this.
In
That
the
was
in the raw file, Jack, all of those trees were the same color, and it was hard to find any of them. And I attempted to use your example from your first talk to us to raise the light, introduce a shadow, bring the light back so that we had dips and valleys and pools of light while I was doing that. That actually started as an intention to photograph the buildings of downtown for the assignment Tulsa, but it just didn't work for me. So I decided to enter it here instead.
Yeah, I mean, it works really well. So, you know, this is, and I would probably go back and leave this one right here. Take that back down.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
And again, you know, these are the kinds of things that, you know, unless I have a raw file, it's hard for me to do. But the only thing here is see this reflection up in here?
Mm-hmm.
And I actually think it's probably better off dark. I mean, it separates the two fountains better, right? So where you are is good. No matter what I try to do here, doesn't really help it. You know, maybe that one helps a little bit, but, and then working the shadows, I just opened up a couple of these trees in here, but that's about it. You know, so if I share that, you know, just open them up and try to get them a little bit farther apart instead of black.
Yeah.
But again, you know, this is, it's a nice photograph, so you did well.
Thank you.
And I don't, you know, when I can't do anything to it, that's a good thing.
I was blessed. If you look at the very center of the photograph, I wanted desperately to take that inactive light pole out that sits over top of a huge.
This one?
To the up and to the right. That one sits directly over a huge interchange on the interstate on the other side of the photograph, and it's inoperable. And I wanted to take it out, but we're not allowed to do that. Thank you, Jack. So much better.
I didn't do that.
Thank you, Jack.
Well, for your own wall, you do whatever you want.
Oh, is that a rule in the ones, our monthly ones? I never knew that. I knew it was in the Gilcrease ones, but not in our clubs.
No adding or subtracting of elements other than dust.
Yeah,
I had no idea.
No, I think that makes perfect sense. Seriously. I mean, you want to work compositions and think about that stuff first, right?
Thank you, Jack.
Yeah, very welcome. Okay, so whose is this? What do we got? Like 1, 2, 3, 4 more.
That's Penny Watson.
She's not here tonight.
Oh, she's not? Okay. Well, you know, this is another one where I struggled a little bit. I'd love to have the raw file. I don't know if this is a pink one or a white one. It feels like it's a pink one only because of the variation in the texture and stuff here. You know, I kind of really wanted to just make this whiter, but I don't know how without having the raw file and just brightening that up and maybe even softening it a little, taking the texture out, open it up, bring the highlights up, maybe the contrast back down, and then play with it like that in case she's going to view this later. Because it's really hard when you start getting these dark values against a dark background, unless your intent is to go back and really use the defining outline of the shape here. Whoopsie, the shape. And then you could go in and you could do something a little different where you're really gonna work the shape like this. and take the exposure down, and now you're going back here and maybe bring some of this back in down here, but it's all about this texture and this line that's coming through the image, and then maybe bringing some of the highlight or white back down. So anyway, that's a tough one. And you can kind of see how you can play different variations of this. The first one, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's nice, it's elegant. I would love to see somebody take and put 5 or 6 flowers in here as opposed to 1, because I've seen this kind of image about 1 million times. I'd love to see them get artistic with their design and creative flow here, and then, you know, maybe have some fun with it with some of the light. Okay, so they're not here. Who's this?
Sherry Fisher?
Hi, Sherry.
No, I'm not Sherry. I'm saying that Sherry Fisher's image.
Is she here?
I don't think so.
All right, well,
I don't see her in the participants.
All right, I'll just show Sherry what I did real quickly. So all I did here was go in and try to add a little bit more texture and depth in the cloud, because it's a very dynamic cloud. And it's a little soft here. You could actually come back in here and take this and just brighten those up just a little bit more. But, you know, for all intent and purposes, you know, she's got a nice image. I like the dichotomy between the two textures, the vertical lines and the big billowing clouds. But, so just some extra texture in that one. Okay, whose is this?
Sarah?
That's mine.
Okay, I couldn't do anything to this.
It's a beautiful photo.
I guess that's a good thing.
That is a good thing. You can go home and sleep well.
Thanks.
So I mean, I like what you did. You've got the light kind of directed. I don't know. It seems like you shot this on a little bit overcast day or in the shadow, which is my favorite kind of thing to do, because you don't have any harsh shadows. And you did a good job of enhancing texture, of probably creating a bigger radio with soft edges in the vignette. You know, something that you might do is just go in and look at these steps. They're really cool. I don't know that I'd open them up much, but just try and separate some of these steps with a little bit more texture.
Okay.
And the highlights. And now they kind of have a little bit more white down in here. And then maybe even just a little bit more down here, not shadow, but just highlights and a little exposure. And now they lead up to the door a little bit more.
Right.
Right?
Uh-huh.
And then you could go back in and do this one thing. So the vignette's good. It's a little strong, and I'm just going to do this. I'm going to take the exposure. I'm going to take the shadows up a little bit. And I just love what's going on down here in this detail. So I might just lighten those just a little in some of these corners. Just a little. So it's maybe not quite as obvious, but really you know, I couldn't find much to do.
Well, I actually darkened.
Wonderful the way it is.
I darkened the picture and then I did the radio filter to brighten up the center of it.
Yeah, it looks great. It looks really good.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, so wonderful job. And let's go back here. I'm going to fix this. A little too bright. All right. All right, I'm going to the next one. This is the last one.
Yeah.
Whose is this?
That's mine, Cindy McKinney.
What is it, Cindy?
Cindy, yeah.
Okay, Cindy. Great. Nice to meet you. Tell me a little bit about this.
This is the Mayo Hotel lobby.
Okay. What were you thinking? What did you like about this?
It's just the symmetry and the lights.
the chandeliers and the
Yeah,
lights
yeah.
coming out of the little seating areas and everything else, right?
Yeah.
Then you got the sconces on the walls shooting light up the sides, the lights up there in the hallways on the second floor. I mean, you got some wonderful light going on in this thing. So I'm gonna show you a little bit different option. And one of the things I'm gonna try to do is create depth to go back to the center, but still share and pump these lights a little bit so you can see a little bit more detail. Because it's a little gray in here
Yeah.
with these lights. So I'm just gonna share this with you real quick, right?
Oh,
So,
wow. Yeah.
and it could be too bright on the ceiling, you know, so we could go back to the ceiling and we could do this, take a look at the ceiling and pull that down just a little, maybe the exposure down a little bit. And maybe that's just a little bright. And this one might be a little bright. But then we used one in here to kind of open up this center in here.
Uh-huh.
And now and I used another one right here to try and drive the leading lines into the staircase. And let me go back and just, as I do that, let me share with you. See how this now has this highlight that leads to the staircase, and the staircase has the light back here. And then there's some absolutely wonderful texture in these things right here, right? So I'm trying to remember, I might have used a radial in here and brushed in some of the highlights back here. So you can see that the highlights and exposure pumped up here in the clarity, so that when you open up some shadows like that, sometimes if you put clarity, it helps separate some midtones. So we went in there and brought those back up, and I'll just go back here for a minute. And then you can see how those are now open. And actually when I did that, I also went in and hit these chairs on the side here and here.
Uh-huh.
And the column back here. Now I'm gonna see if I have any, we'll get another, let me just look at this. Now, so here's another one where I went into the highlights with a brush and just started painting a little bit above those sconces to lighten some of the highlights going up the sconces. So you can see that. And if you look here, you'll see the, oh, and I did change, look at the, the perspective, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I straightened up the perspective just a little.
Yeah. Yeah, that
So-
makes a lot of difference. Yep.
Yeah.
that
So
was-
from an architectural point of view, it's I used to shoot a lot of 4x5, and one of the things I use a lot of is tilt and shift, and so I would rock the front and the back, and I get everything kind of level. But again, painting up these little sconces and making those lights a little bit more dynamic. And again, everybody, I did this really, really fast, like yesterday, so that I could get this kind of done. Normally, this is a different kind of critique because I actually went in and worked on all these files. So that's different than just giving recommendations and suggestions.
Yeah,
So-
that's awesome. Thank you so much.
That's been more than we could hope for.
Yes, that was awesome.
All right. Well, that's the last one.
Outstanding.
I got to eat some dinner.
Thank you.
Well, hopefully Jane's had hers.
She ate.
Maybe when the quarantine's over, I'll come up there and we can go to John Minio's or somewhere.
Oh yeah, that'd be fun. I haven't been there in a long time.
Yeah, me either. Well, again, thank you. Thank you. It's been one of the best programs we've ever had.
Well, I'm happy about that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's great, Jack.
Appreciate your help.
Oh, you're very,
Thank
very
you so
welcome.
much.
Thank you so much. It was really awesome.
All right, guys. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank
right.
you, Jack.
Take
I've
care.
learned about all the things I don't know. I need to
Well-
learn.
That's the best part, right?
Yeah. All right.
All right. See you guys.
Thank you
See
very much,
ya.
Jack. I've learned a million things with you.
All
Thank
right. Wonderful, Loretta. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. All right. next month we do the fair. And we also will have the August winners from the assignment Tulsa. Thank you all. I'm going to shut her down.
Bill.
Bye.
Okay, thanks
Yeah.
so much.
Bill.
Bye.
Yes.
Can you send me a list of the winners, please, so that I don't have to wait for the replay to be posted? I did not take them down.
I'll be happy to. You mean for the assignment Tulsa?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We also have it. Bill Oswald, is it on the website yet?
Not yet. It will be later this evening.
I will need those names pretty shortly.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, man.
You bet. Great.
Bye.
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 Bye.